I want to thank you, Paulo Rangel, to inviting me to this meeting. I hope that you are mostly welcome to Porto and to Portugal, and that you can find the country very open to this kind of debate and discussion related to the future of Europe. I was reading the program, and is very complete, indeed, because you will discuss the future of Europe about the Brexit issue. You will discuss the social state and the competitiveness and the globalization issue. You will discuss transatlantic relation regarding also security and defense all around the world, but also in Europe. And you will discuss populism and nationalism about Europe too. So, you are discussing what is important for the next couple of years. I will have three or four remarks about these issues. The first one, related with the future of Europe and the Brexit, starting to ask, what Europe? What Europe are we thinking when we project this uncertainty and these doubts for the coming years? We are thinking in the European Union, of course, but European Union has 27 countries. They are not all the same. They don't have the same history. They don't have the same level of economic, social and political development. They are not in the same cycle of growth prospects. They don't have the same structure, thinking of civil society, civil institutions, and so on. We have different Europes inside Europe, with different histories. At the same time, we have a strong heritage from old problems with Russia, problems in the Balkans, problems regarding the Mediterranean, problems about some conflicts between the continent and the Atlantic and the rest of the world, tensions regarding our border with the Ottoman Empire and Turkey, tensions between Germanic people and Frank people. All of that is part of European heritage. Some of the issues are historical problems, but we can say that some of them are renewing in a different prospect and different pace old problems, old tensions. So I think we can say that 60 years ago, a couple of countries thought that the best way to avoid a new world war, to keep peace, was promoting commerce, free commerce, with the ambition to get, in the future, an economic community. She was not born since the beginning, so complete as we can imagine today, but for these 60 years, we could be able to enlarge the participants on the project, to go from a commercial view of peace to an integrated view of politics and economies around the euro, the European Union and the monetary union, economic and monetary union. So we had the possibility to develop in a very impressive way what was the dream of a few some years ago to a more consistent and ambitious project today. But it's important not to forget we are facing very severe problems. And we don't have, until now, the best answers to all of the, not all of the problems, but to tackle the causes of our main problems. These problems, in certain way, are related with the incompletude of the project. We don't have yet a banking union, fully complete banking union. You still lack some of the pillars for that purpose. And we are wasting time to get a more desirable result in the process. We are far to achieve a financial union, and we will need them, a kind of financial union, if we want to reduce the risks inside EU and inside of the Eurozone, and to share these risks by the market. It's easier to expect to share the risks from the market rather than the taxpayers and the countries. So we would obtain a better result starting rapidly discussing what can we do to accelerate this process. We have in major countries the doubt about the future. I hope Macron will win next presidential election in France. I don't hesitate saying that he, despite all the difference among us, is pro-European, a moderate, a center politician, essential to building a future for European Union. That's the candidate of the integration, European integration. On the other side, we have Marine Le Pen, who is the candidate of the disintegration. So I'm no doubt about the candidate I want to survive in the next election. But I cannot ignore that in the first election, almost half of the voters voted against this idea of Europe. And the euro and the prosperity that we want to share in the European project. Almost half of the voters. On the left side and on the right side, both radicals. One of them is in the second tour. The others will split their support between Macron and Le Pen. Suppose Macron wins the election. I hope so. How he will govern, rule France when we see the Socialist Party in a mess, the Republicans so divided as they are, Macron without party, and Front National, very well organized, and with a stronger support than 10 or 20 years ago. How many reforms, important structural reforms, can Macron implement if the parliament will be composed by Eurosceptics, populists, radicals, that only want to wait one more time, one more year, 2 more years, to explain people that moderate people cannot offer nothing positive to the future. That's their project. We can say that these kind of political risks are present in other countries. I do not want to mention individually the several situations, but of course you can imagine very easily that we have different countries with major political risks like we can find in presidential election in France. Brexit, in certain extent, is a child in this context. People want to prove their sovereignty, their willingness to choose differently for the future. They are not happy with the present situation. What is the present situation? Crisis. Some years ago, we had a marvelous project related to the euro, to the political integration, to a strong bloc, commercial bloc in the world, keeping the peace, receiving Nobel Prize. Now we have crisis, social crisis, refugee crisis, security crisis, economic crisis. We are not growing enough. We are still paying the price of the debt crisis. So many crises. That's why we have so important populisms. Of course. How can we fight against these populistic, radicalistic projects? Presenting different results and promoting different prospects for the future. It's not too late to start to complete the banking union. It's not too late to start talk talking about financial union. It's not too late to say that some of our political problems can be better prepared if the Brexit negotiations can be handled with wisdom and avoiding a hard Brexit, still keeping the possibility to construct a good partnership between EU and United Kingdom. You will have the possibility to discuss this more closely, in a more closely way. But let me say, it's impossible to keep at the end of the process for United Kingdom a so comfortable situation as in the first place when the UK was member of European Union. But we must avoid the great confrontation with the other possibility to have a hard Brexit, which means we will never be able to agree in defense, in security, in politics, in the international values, and in economical terms. We cannot have, as an example for different countries, an incentive to go out of European Union and get a better situation, but we cannot have a strong incentive to say to everyone that European Union cannot be plural, tolerant, and progressive and open idea. To close these remarks, I would say that the answers that we can find useful to solve these problems must be separated in two parts. The more immediate answers we must present against the more closed risks we are facing together. The other side, we must work in structural answers for the future. It's more easy to find solution and to deliver the first one. And we have presented a very well-performed role dealing with the debt crisis, not so good in the refugee crisis, but in response to the economic and financial crisis, the European Union could be able to address the most important problems. 4 years ago, lots of people were betting on the end of the euro. This is not anymore an interesting game. So we are now facing different prospects because at 25 hour we could be able to find solutions. The problem is to get the second one, the second problems, the structural problems, without treaty changes, because if we must change treaties, we will never agree among all countries to do it. We need to find alternatives to the monetary policy. It's impossible to expect for the next 10 or 20 years that ECB offer the possibility to support growth if the countries, the member states, are not able to implement important reform agenda. And it's important to have a political answer relating to the Russia issue, the Brexit issue, and the relationship between European Union and United States. These three problems, structural problems, must be faced in a very responsible way. I don't believe, as I said in the first place, in the opposition between a minimal Europe and federal Europe. I strongly believe in a future of states in the European Union, more responsible states, with more discipline and solidarity. Both things are indispensable, and we only can build on one pillar if we can build something in the other pillar. It's indispensable to envisage some fiscal capacity in the Eurozone. Don't waste time waiting for the next crisis to admit this failure into our institutional building. We need something to act among the countries that share the same currency. It's impossible to sustain a Eurozone without a fiscal capacity. You can discuss what capacity, the means to do it. We can have a strong discussion around it, but we must have it. For good and to avoid a more strong crisis in the next years. But of course, at the end, we need to solve a problem, an important problem that is a world problem. It's not only a European problem. In Europe, has strongest sensitiveness, but it's not only European. I want to refer the competitiveness problem when we are thinking in social state, in social benefits, and in the project of welfare. You know that European countries present around the world the most important social expense. Most of this expense is public expense, but there is also private expense in social care. But most part of the people is not confident on the future, and is not pleasant, has not a pleasant idea about what he can see today. So we cannot spend more. It's impossible to spend more. But the outcome, it's not satisfying most part of the people. There is something about the distributive function in our societies that is fueling the populist side of the politics, and that must have an answer. If globalization, if the technological mutations were less impressive, maybe we could be able to control the political problem in a better position. But things are changing in a high-speed way. We don't control the process. We only have the problems for now. We don't know where it will come the next jobs in the future economy. So we must be prepared to act in the distributive function of our societies. We cannot live with the disparity we can find now among the last 10% of the people with less profits, with less salaries, and the people, the better people in the society, the 1%, the 0.1% of the people that have most important returns on the economic and social side. It's not a problem for the left parties or for the center parties or for the right parties. It's a social problem that we must face in Portugal, in Spain, in Europe, but also in China, because these problems are now growing at a fast pace in China too. So it's a problem for everyone. But as we can say, and we say it in Portugal, I can manage very well the problems of other peoples. The problem is to solve our problems, meaning that Europe must satisfy European peoples addressing these kind of problems. So I hope that you can have a good discussion in this seminar, and that you can help us in the opposition or in government. We have both situations among the EPP parties to implement new ideas that can offer a true alternative to European peoples. You are a very important network, so I hope that you can provide good ideas, not only for the next 20 years, but also to the next 4 years, because we need the next 4 years to achieve the next 20 in a better position. Thank you very much.